Be it as it is, this manga is pretty cute and at the same time pretty entertaining. Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb initiative. I'm your host, the Weeb. This is the show where every other week I'll be talking about anime, manga, and everything in between. This week, contrary to what I initially thought this week's episode would be, unfortunately I got some things mixed up and I thought I had another week to do the Cinderella Grey review, but lo and behold, I was wrong. And so for all my audio only listeners in Spotify and other platforms, sorry guys, this one's coming out one day later. For YouTube, hopefully this will not be the same case. Anyways, so let's get to the actual episode. So first off, disclaimers. Spoiler alert, I'll be talking about everything that happens in the manga. So let's get started. Today, I'll be talking about one of the, I think, most underrated mangas in the last few years. One that I took upon myself to actually read. I found it in one of my late night searches on. I went to manga that has both romance and action, and I was pleasantly surprised by it because this is actually pretty solid, though it has some flaws, and I think that for the most part this will be the linchpin of this whole review, is that this manga is both pretty good and also not so great, let's say. So anyways, let's get started. First off, we're going to talk about Tales of the Wedding Rings, or Keiko no Yubi wa no Monogatari. This manga was originally written by maybe I don't know how do you pronounce this, but or maybe I don't know how do you pronounce this, though. From what I gather, is a duo of an artist and a writer, and they have a pretty okay history with serializing some other mangas. I don't have many of their works here right now, but they have been around for some time now. This was published by Square Enix. You can actually read through this in their Square Enix app in the West, so there's that. It is fully translated to English, and so for that reason it's pretty great. It has 15 volumes. I think it's 200 something chapters with around 20-25 pages per chapter, so it's a pretty great read in terms of time and actual content. It ran originally from March 2014 to August 2024, and then had an anime adaptation made by the studio Stay Point Entertainment with 12 episodes from January 2024 to March 2024, and also they had a second season announced, and actually at the time of writing has not yet started. It will start in October 2025 and maybe finish up by December. So it's pretty okay manga, all things considered, and having 2 seasons, I think it covers a lot of stuff. I don't know how much actually the anime covers, so I cannot really talk about it much. I will not be talking about the anime anyways, but easy to say, if you don't want to read the manga, please watch the anime, support the artists, support the studio, though I would recommend reading the manga. And after this whole preamble for the stats and stuff, let's get to the actual story. So, Keiko no Yubi wa no Monogatari, or The Tales of the Wedding Rings, starts with our main character Sato, a teenage boy, high school setting, the whole thing. And he's, from the very beginning, we can see that he has a crush on his childhood friend Hime. He living alone, far away from his parents, because I think his parents are from the countryside, and he living in Tokyo alone and being the neighbor of his childhood friend Hime that lives with her grandfather. I don't know if they do give the grandfather a name in this part, but anyways, it doesn't really last that long, because as we start the story, we see that even though Sato really has a crush on Hime and stuff. She declares to him that she will be moving away from town, and in a feat of right now is the last time I will be able to actually do this, he wants to confess his love for her, and in the meantime, while trying to do this, he gets transported to another world just to find out that actually Hime is a princess of a human kingdom in a different land. And so, to the guys in the back that didn't get it, this is at its base an isekai. Even though it does happen like this, the thing kind of goes in a somewhat decent direction. We then find out that actually Hime's grandfather is a sage, Alabaster. He's basically the archmage of the kingdom, more or less, and for that he's a really important figure. And then, having been transported to there and stuff, we get a really quick rundown of the whole thing, where there's actually a threat in this world. Basically the world is threatened by a being known as the Abyss King that comes from the Abyss, that is basically a huge rift inside of no man's land that basically sprouts shadow monsters, and then the whole thing kind of falls in place where we gotta save the world and so on and so forth. With that said, we have then the presentation of the main gimmick, the main, let's say, MacGuffin of this whole manga, and the one thing in the title, the Rings of Power. So Sato actually gets chosen by the ring, something more or less like that, and the Ring of Power is the Ring of the King, so he then is mentioned as the Ring King from then on. And Hime has the first of 4 different rings for each of the princes that he has to gather. If I'm not mistaken, is the Ring of Air. And so we set out to an adventure where we're going to first, and this is the part where I need to actually start the comparison to actually Lord of the Rings, because I mean, it is not that it is intentional, I think. I couldn't find anything to actually support that it is intentional, but at the same time, it fits so well in some places that it feels kind of too well done to actually be something of coincidence, you know? So the first part and the first, let's say, major arc that we have here in, I'll just say in the tales, is the Fellowship of the Ring, or if you want to call it, it's gathering the Harem to then fight the bad guys. So we first have setting out in this quest Sato, who is at this point is really green, really mature. He doesn't know what really he needs to do, even though he has been passed off this responsibility and the pressure and stuff. But at the same time, we have then by his side, we have Alabaster, who is the voice of reason for the most part, and Hime, who is the main love interest, and something that will become clearer and clearer as the manga goes on. But then they need to go through the allied nations, more or less, to gather the rest of the princes to actually get all of the rings, and then get all of the power of all of the rings together, and then finish off the Abyss King. With that said, we then find the first, let's say, princess that we find is Nephritis is an elf, and she lives in a really secluded elf village. So I mean, it is a secluded elf village protected by forces of nature, and they don't want to actually involve themselves with the war it's coming, because it's not really they know that they won't survive, and they don't want to take losses and so on and so forth. I mean, it's pretty close to the beginning of the Lord of the Rings series. So anyways, so we find out that Nephritis actually lives in this really secluded kind of situation. She is a bookworm. She only has books to her name, let's say. She lives with her brother, while her parents, they sacrifice themselves to activate the power of one of the rings to actually protect the whole village and stuff. And for that reason, we have the first, let's say, ordeal that Sato needs to overcome with the help of Hime and Alabaster to basically convince, more or less, her Nefertiti's brother to let her go and actually grab the ring. And so basically to convince him to actually enter as an ally to fight the war and so on and so forth, because at this point Nefertiti's brother is the leader of the elves and so on and so forth. And so we go from there. Then the next, after they get everything, they actually convince Nefertiti to actually help them and so on and so forth. She then dons the ring and activates its power, though at this point the rings for most of the princes don't actually have that much importance, all things considered, because for the most part what the rings from the princess do is basically give Sato more power, and so he gets buffed the more girls he has in his harem, let's say. And the rest of the manga goes somewhat like this. For the rest of this arc, we then go to the next city, that is a nomad settlement of the beastmen. I think they that's what they call in the manga. Here the princess it's a matriarchal kind of society. You can get the vibe from just looking at it. The girl that we are going to get here, the princess of the city, is Granarch. Granarch is what I would like to call the stereotypical tall, strong, buff cat girl, much like Ghislaine from Mushoku Tensei. She fits inside of the same, let's say, niche, and she has that whole thing about being way too forward. She is really outspoken and really loves to fight and stuff, but at the same time she has a really cute side. It becomes clearer more towards the end of the manga, but it is that kind of thing she has, though, to let's say the ordeal that they find is her to basically not sacrifice, but to leave her family behind to actually go and try to save the world and so on and so forth. And this is a major point there, because they have a really tightly knit community with her people, so it's a really difficult thing at that point. Next up is, and I think I will mess up this order more or less, because one of these is a pretty, let's say, small arc, but the next one is Ember. Ember is the last descendant of the dwarfs, and let's say this is one of the few parts that doesn't actually, let's say, line up with the Lord of the Rings that much, but here the dwarfs have been basically extinct, and Ember is not actually really a descendant as per se, but she is a robot with the knowledge of the dwarves and so on and so forth, and this is an important point, the capability of reproducing dwarfs. So she's loaded with the thing you need to the babies, and we have this whole thing of learning more or less how and why the dwarfs were basically extinct, and from then on, or maybe a bit before that, we get the idea that the last ranking before Sato, he was an actual motherfucker, and he screwed over everything that he could. He sacrifice all his power to just stay with his princesses and basically threw the world away and did not feel his duty and so forth. This is something that is better developed as the story goes on, but this is, I think, the first major thing that happens that really puts that idea forward, let's say. We do find out later through a friend of Alabaster that we have actual people who saw and were present when the last Ring King was alive and did all of the horrible things that he did. But either way, that's one of the plot points that they ride a bit. Then after Ember, and I don't know if it's after or before, but anyways, so the next person, and at this point, the last princess that Sato needs to actually gather is Saphir. Saphir is the younger sister of and I don't know if you could say that they are dragons, but they are kind of dragon descendants, something like that, something like Dragonborn, more or less. So Saphir is the younger sister of the royal dragon family of a separate city, and the whole ordeal with her is that she offers herself as the Water Ring Princess in the place of her older sister. That would be the, let's say, better choice, more or less, because her older sister already has a romantic interest on another dude, and then they want to be happy together and stuff, and Saphir basically sacrificing herself so her sister can be happy. She chooses to join up the group, though it's not really that dramatic, all things considered, because Saphir herself is one of the, I would say, better characters in the whole manga, because she's that kind of sassy, sarcastic kind of girl, which helps a lot with characterization, and helps a lot also because at the point that she joins up, I think the manga overall gets really better because she can like tease other people and actually crack jokes at the cost of the heroes, which then frees up a lot of comedy space. I know that for the most part, whenever I talk about comedic timing, I do hate when they use jokes to crack a serious topic or a serious situation, but I would say that they had the sensibility to actually do a decent job with Saphir specifically, because although she does use a lot of sarcasm and stuff, she can crack jokes at the good points, and it's more or less well done. With that said, we now have the Fellowship of the Ring, more or less, and then we go through the second part, that is I think the name of the movie is Twin Towers, if I'm not mistaken. The Two Towers, I don't actually remember. It's been a long ass time since I watched Lord of the Rings too, but anyways, yeah, I think it's the Two Towers. Anyways, so next up we have then the whole thing where we do get, let's say, training montage, more or less, with everyone now powered on and stuff. We do see a bit, let's say, of development in the let's say the combat part of everyone, because right now Sato has been kind of winging it. Hime is more or less useless. Euphrates is kind of useless too, and so basically the only ones that can fight is Granate, Saphir, and Ember, though Saphir is the last one to actually go into a fight anyway. So we have this whole training montage. We have a bit, and this is the part where the manga takes care of a bit of a more or less romantic tension between all of them, because from the get-go it's pretty explicit, the fact that the Ring King should love all of his wives, and the rings don't only represent power for the Ring King, but also the bonds that he shares with his wives and stuff. And so even though there is, let's say, emotional commitment since the beginning whenever he recruits one of them, this second part, when all of them are together, is the part where the manga kind of tries to take care of the fact that until this point it feels really like Sato knows that he has kind of a duty to finish when we're talking about saving the world with the power of everyone, but he clearly just has eyes for Hime and nowhere else. And this is the part where they try to like push it forward to at the very least kiss each of them and actually have, I'll not say that they do, but they at the very least try to kind of start something. I think that at this point he does, how do you say that in English? Consummate the act with Hime specifically, but not the other girls. And the other girls maybe just, oh my god, this is a terrible expression to use right now, but they just, let's say, sit by the cook chair at the door and watch it, more or less. And basically, right, so this is the part more veered towards the romance stuff, the slice of life kind of stuff. We really do take a detour from most of our combats and fights and adventure to then focus on the romance. We also have the introduction of Morion, who is Hime's younger sister, and I would say an apprentice archmage. So she's a great mage and stuff, and she has been studying wizardry ever since Hime has moved to our world, so it's been that. And so she takes upon herself to actually teach the girls, or at the very least Hime, how to use their magic. And from then on, we also have romantic tension between her and Sato, and the whole thing kind of grows and goes in the way that you would think it goes, with two sisters competing for one guy and so on and so forth. In that way, it's pretty tropey, but at the same time, I think that this anime has enough good qualities to actually not warranted that, but to just pass it through. It's okay. And from then on, we do have the third major arc that is out, and this one actually fits. Is the Return of the King. So it is the part where the the Abyss forces are actually going through the world in a really quick pace and actually begin to attack in mass on multiple of the allied cities and stuff. And one of the best, let's say, many things that happen in this one part, and the one that I actually thought that maybe we would have some kind of drama, some kind of stakes, because at this point you can clearly see that this is one of those mangas that don't actually have anything to really challenge the reader, and none of the characters are actually terrible any of the time. So they do have a kind of corruption kind of try with Hime. So we have each of them falling into a nightmare scenario and stuff, and Sato basically losing Hime to the power of the beast, and we have in that it is pretty great. It's the reaffirm of the fact that there is danger there, but at the same time the power of friendship wins over, or the power of love in this case, but you know what I mean. And they kind of resolve it after a lot of struggle. It's a pretty great, well written mini, I think it's a 3, 4, maybe 5 chapters deal, so it's really okay. It's one whole volume is this, so it's pretty nice. In that way, the whole thing kind of goes from there. We have every one of the girls I actually like now really into it to fight and stuff. Now then that they have actually faced the Abyss King head on, they know the amount of the expectations and the pressure that they are on, and the dangers that they will go through. And so now Sato actually consummates the act with everyone, and you know, it is one scene in the whole manga, but it is that one scene that we were all expecting at this point. And from then on, they go there, beat the guy, everybody's happy and stuff. And for the last few chapters of the manga, we actually have a bit of, and this to me is not that bad, but at the very least I would say that it is pretty shooting in that scenario. But the way that they choose to spend their honeymoon is actually to go back to the normal, to our world, and kind of leave off the high school life for the most part. So we have, by the end of the manga, that we had all of this fantasy stuff and other medieval kind of scenarios and stuff. We now have a dragon, an elf, a robot, and cat girl actually going to school inside of a normal school. And so the whole thing goes, and you know, you can extrapolate what happens from there. We do have a scene, and not only a scene, but there is a mini arc where each of the girls is kind of trying to actually get closer to Sato in their own ways, because at the end of the day, even though we know that Hime is the first princess, is the top priority, all of the girls are in many ways loved by him, and so even though they consummated the act and stuff, it's more to reassure the fact that they love each other, all of them, and they are going to like live in this really weird familiar structure, though it is cute. But at the end of the day, I'm being pretty technical here because I'm that kind of guy when looking at it at a vacuum, but at the same time it is one of the mangas that I really love to actually read, and for that it is really nice. The whole thing is kind of pretty cute. That being said, we do have let's say a mini scenario for each of the girls. So the one that I think jumps out more because it's really a juxtaposition is the one with Granart, because at this point Granart has been so outspoken and stuff, and she's always so forward, so dominating in that sense, so assertive with her own stuff that we wouldn't expect something like this. But the way that she does her scenario is so cute, because she wants to actually give Sato a Valentine's gift, and then she kind of fumbles it, and then he fumbles the response, and then he needs to make up with her, and it's pretty cute in that sense. I think Nefreti is pretty okay. It's not nothing that you wouldn't expect. It does not really give that much more personality to her. Instead, it just like reassures her place, her role in the let's say in the trope of the harem. Amber, in that sense, she's really thrown to the side because the whole thing is pretty cut and dry at this point, because also she's a robot, and then there's the whole thing of fucking a robot and whatever. And then we have Sapphire, and Sapphire is being sarcastic and bitterly honest, let's say. Everything is pretty cut and dry too, but in a way that they reach the understanding really quickly, and it does not leave much space to actually develop something that really is, let's say, developed as cute. It is cute, but it's a different kind of, it's pretty kind of dry in that sense. It does not like lead to much of a debate or much of a different scene from that. And then we have another scene with Hime, and then they need to actually get, after they go through their honeymoon, and I think they graduate from high school, they go back to their world and go on to live as the Ring King and the Ring Princesses all together. And I think it's in a show of good faith towards the readers, and in something that I wish more mangakas did this, because it is really something that, although it's not important to actually do it, although it's not really, let's say, necessary to do it, it is something that is really unmistakably cute, and really something that, let's say, praise on the fact that we want to actually see this happen. We want to actually see a bit of the future of the harem, because at this point, and this goes through a whole lot of other series, other mangas, other even movies, normal series and stuff. We do know that they are a harem, they love each other and stuff. We do know that they do their couple stuff and other things, but we want to see a bit of them kind of after the fact, you know, after the part where they are only like boyfriend and girlfriend. We want to see the part where they are like married, and most importantly in this case with kids. It's something that, for example, Darling in the Franxx did well by the end. It's something that, if we were going to take a more recent and frankly more prevalent example, either Takagi-san, or even more recently, if you want to take Sonobitsuke Doll or My Dress Up Darling, the final chapters or final like arcs that they released towards the end of the manga, it is them, the main couple, with their kid, which then solidifies the idea of family, and in a weird way it becomes more cathartic. I think that it adds something, even though it's not necessary, even though they don't have the obligation to do it. I think that it adds a really great precedent for the series, and really does give a bit of satisfaction, a bit of catharsis to the fans that have seen these characters grow and so on and so forth. This whole preamble is just to say that in the last few pages, I think the last frame of this manga is a panoramic view of each of the girls with Sato and their kids, and oh my god, it's fucking adorable. Oh man. But yeah, that's the story basically. I don't want to really stretch this much out because I have already wrecked this whole thing and already talked about some of my opinion either way. But just to reiterate here, I think in a deep part of my heart, I truly do think that this is the Lord of the Rings if it was written by a Harem mangaka, because man, it is too close. Some of the things are way too close to be coincidences. I don't feel confident that this was not at the very least a bit intentional the way that they do it. I mean, I know that Lord of the Rings is an old series and it has a huge recognition throughout the world and so on and so forth. But come on, man, it is way too close. They gathering the Harem is basically the Fellowship to then have the training montage of the two towers, and then, oh man, the Return of the King, it's a bit of a meme. I'm stretching there, but the Fellowship of the Ring, was way too close. I know that they don't get off with every one of their allies. I know we don't actually get someone like Boromir in the middle of it. And again, I know that I'm talking about the Lord of the Rings when talking about the manga, but I mean, it is something. I did not read it because I thought it was Lord of the Rings, but with Harem. But at the same time, it is pretty funny to say that there is a version of it which instead of the normal Fellowship is a harem of waifus, and basically they do the same thing. It's funny in that sense. And with that said, I think I will leave it at that. Again, read the manga or watch the anime, whichever you can. And again, this is all in English, officially translated through Square Enix. You can buy it on Amazon from I don't know. So there's that. With that said, thank you guys for listening, thank you guys for watching. Please like, please share, please follow, depending on the platform you're in. And I hope you stick around for next time. Bye.